Hi, I'm Bob Harris of Decorative Concrete Institute. Welcome to Duraman's training and educational series for industrial and decorative concrete flooring systems. Identifying your substrate is really important with the type of product that you're proposing to resurface it with, starting with addressing the cracks. Now, there are generally two types of cracks. There's static cracking, and then there's actual structural cracking. Static is what referred to sometimes as random map cracking. In most cases, after you profile, it's not a concern. You can prime and put your system over the top of that. However, when you have an actual working crack, you probably should fill it, and understand the type of crack is really, really important. Now, consult with your Duraman representative on the best method for crack repair, because the different types of systems, depending on the thickness you're going over that crack with, may require a different system. For example, crack stitching. Now, if it's old concrete, you can simply crack chase the crack out and fill it with a quick setting structural repair. This is a fast setting urethane repair. It's really great for this type of application, allowing us to go back on our panel here with the skim coat. So in essence, what we're doing is we're preparing this panel right here, our test panel, to receive the application of a micro topping or a skim coat. So what we're going to do is we're just going to quickly put a faux crack in here to show you how to address it. So we're going to take the 4-inch grinder first, and we're going to come in, and for the depth, just using a 4-inch blade, continuous rim blade, we're going to cut a saw kerf in here. And then for demonstration purposes, I'm going to demonstrate the crack chaser blade. Now, with this type of material, it's not mandatory that you crack chase it. Where you would use the crack chaser blade is if you had a lot of chips and spalls where you had to get in, the crack was perhaps wide. That's a great scenario of where you would use the crack chaser blade. So we're simply going to demonstrate how to use that. So let's get busy. So had this been an actual crack in the concrete, we would have addressed it the same way, meaning we would have used first the straight 4-inch blade for depth. We want to get depth to that. And then had it required the crack chaser blade, then we would come and router it out or V it out, just like we demonstrated here. So the next step, what we want to do is usually we'll vacuum it real quick, and then I'm going to come through with a wire brush. Now, this is kind of a common mistake I see a lot of people in the industry make, is that they don't do a thorough job of cleaning this crack wall out, and then they wonder why they have adhesion issues. So you need to be very thorough with cleaning it. So we'll come in here and vacuum it first. Okay. Now, we probably got, 95% of that dust out of there, that leftover particulate. Now we're just going to demonstrate and come in. Well, that's what we thought. Look at that. So there's still a lot of dust in there, as you can see. So what we're going to use now is this rapid setting structural low viscosity urethane. This is a great product because you can get back out on the next application probably within about 25 to 30 minutes. It's tack-free in 3 to 5 minutes, depending on the ambient and substrate temperature. But the fact that I can come back, take my grinder over the top of this within about 25 to 30 minutes is huge when you're out on a project. So it does require you to shake the material. What I like to do also with this type of material, if it's cold outside, freezing part of the winter, go ahead and make sure you keep this in a warm environment prior to you using it. And certainly you don't want to let a product like this freeze. Okay? So now what we do is we'll take this, this cap off, put some gloves on just to protect ourselves. It's a two-component system inside of here. You have an A and a B side, basically. So what you do is you'll come in and you'll pull this lid off. Now I like to save this, okay? In the event that we don't use this whole cartridge, we can make sure, like this is the gray side, for example. I'll look in here, and you can put it back, and it'll help preserve this material. So it's a good idea to do that. Now what we'll do is we'll take our nozzle, and you'll notice inside of this nozzle there is a spiral, and this spiral mechanism inside this is where the two components mix, okay? So in addition to that, we still like to go through, and when you start to dispense the material into your crack, generally you're going to overfill it slightly. It's not a bad idea just to have an old bucket there to make sure that you just don't go right into your joint. Perhaps that first, say, 5 seconds of material, it might be unthoroughly mixed material. So it's a great idea just to squeeze some of it right into a container that you see right here. You can see it starting to dispense here. It's going to take a little bit to get it out of here. So now we've got thorough color, and we go right into our joint. Not a bad idea to come through real quick and just put a light layer, maybe 8 feet out in front, and then come back and refill. It's not a bad idea to make sure you come through, and don't be afraid to overfill this a little bit. You don't want to have a recessed area in there. So let's get us a stopwatch real quick, and we'll determine from the time that we're putting this in how much time is transpiring until the time that we actually come back and are able to grind this back flush. So we've got the stopwatch started. I'm just lightly overfilling this. And then we'll let that dry 25, 30 minutes, and we'll come back and we'll hit it with our dustless grinder, which will demonstrate, and then that allows us to move on to the next step. All right, here we are back on our crack repair. We're at 2 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. So we're just under 3 minutes, and I'm going to touch it. I haven't touched it yet, but let's see here. And you can see within 3 minutes of time. Now I do feel ever so slightly tack, but you can see how rapid setting this is, which is great out on a job site. So you can imagine, especially on a commercial type application, if you used an epoxy that took hours to dry, what would happen in that time frame? People would walk through it, dust particulate would get in there. So this is really great. In less than 3 minutes, it's already becoming now tack-free. And we'll check back here on this crack repair in about the next 20 minutes, and I think we'll be ready to move on to our next step, and that's to demonstrate the dustless grinder over the top of the crack. All right, we're back here on our crack repair. For demonstration purposes only, we've come back with an elapsed time of just under 14 minutes. Now look, follow the manufacturer's recommendations, and I believe this manufacturer recommends a minimum of 30-minute dry time. But the whole point we're making is you can see how rapid setting this type of material is. So we're going to do just a small test here and see what we get at roughly 15 minutes in to grind it from the time of application. Also, you're never really going to be doing a small repair like this. Typically, you're going to be chasing a whole crack out. And so by the time that you've completed, say 20 or 30 or 40 lineal feet, chances are you have 30 minutes of dry time anyways. But let's see what we get when we grind back over the top of this at roughly 15 minutes. Okay. So what we're looking at now is a nice uniform patch, basically, that's flush with the existing concrete. Now I will say that this concrete test panel that we're working on is still a little bit soft. The concrete's roughly 2 weeks old, so it's real easy to obtain that profile. But as you can see here, we have a crack that has now been filled and ground flush and back level with the surface. Now, a word of caution. Keep in mind, when you're using a cement-based topping, like a skim coat, for example, which is a material that's about 1/8 of an inch overall thickness or less, or even if you're using a macro topping, perhaps you're using a self-leveling or a stampable overlay. What happens is if you're not careful, you're going to get ghosting, meaning that when you put your cement-based topping back over this, you're going to have a differential cure rate of the material because the polymer is not absorbing into this resinous material. However, it's absorbing into the concrete substrate. So what's the remedy for that? Generally what we'll do, like on Scrofino, for example, it requires a bond coat of CP1000. We'll go ahead and repair the crack, and then we'll just put an application of CP1000 on either side of the crack, perhaps 8 inches on either side. We'll skim down the first application of Scrofino regular. We'll let that dry. Then we'll prime everything. So we're priming over the top of the skim coat and also priming the rest of the substrate. And then once that's dry, we come back over it with our first layer of the finished flooring application. And that's going to greatly reduce the chance of any of this ghosting back through. So always keep that in mind. You can't just go over the top of the crack with your cement-based skim coat because it will definitely ghost back through your finished floor. Every project has its own unique qualities. For this reason, that's why it's important to consult your Duraman representative for project-specific questions. Now, you may have questions on mix ratios, which is certainly listed on their website, or other project concerns such as moisture. Now, the industry standard is 3 pounds of moisture vapor transmission in 1,000 square feet in a 24-hour window. Now, Duraman has a complete line of moisture-related products. For example, Purdue MVT will take 8-pound readings, and it'll cover up to 8 pounds and 1,000 square feet in 24 hours. Purdue MVT Plus will get you 18 to 20 pounds of moisture vapor transmission and bring it down to within acceptable tolerances. And also a great system to consider is Purdue UMC, which is the urethane modified concrete, which is good up to 18 to 20 pounds of moisture vapor transmission.